Hello everyone, this is Mukundan Raghavan, and this video we are going to see the Java Supplier function and its use cases in Selenium. Let's understand the basics. What is Java Supplier function? Java Supplier function is the functional interface from the Java util function package. Functional interface is an interface that contains only one abstract method. In our case of supplier, the abstract method name is get method. Generally, we will use the supplier function to supply some data or information to the place where we need. How do we get that? By using the get method. Here, let's see the simple example. I want to supply some random number for some functional case. So I'm creating the supplier function here. Supplier double. Here double means the return type and random number supplier is the function name. And function implementation is the lambda expression where I am getting some random number from the math library. How do we use it? As we discussed, we will use the same name random number supplier dot get method which will return some random number and later point we can use wherever we want. So this is a simple implementation about the supplier function. Let's understand when and why we will use the supplier function. Lazy evaluation. Basically, you want to just generate the data whenever it's only required. So in that case, we will use the lazy evaluation and we will use the supplier function. Parameterization, rather than exposing all the information about the data, you can just parameterize by using the supplier function. Functional composition, along with consumer functions and predicates, you can use the supplier function. Even we are going to see some example in the Selenium use case. Next one, stateful generation. Whenever you want to generate some value based on the state, you can use the supplier function. Let's understand more on the stateful generation. Here you can see the simple class which is stateful supplier example. Here it has its own counter variable and one supplier function which is get stateful supplier. Its job is to return the value of the counter. However, before returning, it's increasing that. Now in the main function, I am creating the instance for that. By using the example, I'm just calling the get stateful supplier. Then this function which is saved into the stateful supplier. Now here you can see whenever I want to get the value, I will be just mentioning stateful supplier dot get, so that every time you call this get method, it will give its own input, which can be 1, 2, 3 and so on. For example, if I create one more instance of stateful supplier example, then it has its own counter variable, it has its own values. So here we are maintaining the state by using the supplier function. This could be the simple example about the stateful supplier. Let's understand how it can be useful or leveraged in the Selenium area. Before going to the Selenium, let's execute the same random number supplier and see the output. Here we can use the lambda expressions or we can use the method reference as well. Here I am referencing the random method from the math library or math class, so that whenever I want that value, I will be using random number supplier dot get method. Let's execute and see the output. Again, one more time. Every time it gives some random number to us. Yes, that's good. Let's go to the Selenist. Here I am creating one supplier function which is locator supplier. Locator supplier gets two inputs, locator key and locator type. This locator key and locator type can be seen here as well. This is locators.properties where we will add all our locators for the UI automation. The first one would be the locator key and second one would be the locator type. This both combines the key for this property value. For example, if I pass username.xpath, if I pass this, you will get the value for this. Let's go to the Selenist. Now in this supplier function, I'm just loading the file which we discussed, locators.properties. Then I'm getting the property key. Basically, in order to get the value which you see here as a xpath, I need to pass username.xpath. In our case, we are passing this locator key and locator type. We may pass the value like username and xpath. We need to combine these two things to get the property key. That's why locator key dot locator type to lower key. Once you have the property key, you can pass the property key and you can get the value. So that is the locator value. So now at this point of time, we have the exactly have this exact XPath. However, the locator's type can be XPath, CSS, ID and so on. So we are checking the locator type, whether it is a XPath, CSS, ID. Based on that, we are using by.xpath, by.css selector, by.id. So by seeing this, you can understand based on the locator type, we will return the value which is type of by. So that's the reason in supplier definition also we mentioned return type as by. Now coming to the same class, just minimize this and here you can see perform action on element. Here obviously we need the driver. Instead of passing the locator, I am passing the locator supplier which is type of supplier and consumer function. Here you can see whenever I want to get the supplier, I will be getting that and I will be using the get method so that I will be getting the locator. So by this you can clearly understand this perform action on element receives driver and one supplier function and one consumer function. So it's very easy that we can modularize everything by use the functional interfaces. Now let's go to the implementation and try to understand more. Before to that, I would like to showcase you one more overloaded method. In our project, maximum times we will be using XPath or CSS, any one of that, not all the things. So that's the reason sometimes we can overload the method based on our project. Maybe in my project, I am using all the places XPath. So no need to mention every time XPath as the locator type. I can overload the method. Whenever you pass only the locator key, consider the locator type as XPath. In your project, if you are using the XPath, you can mention the XPath or you can use the CSS, whatever you use. Now let's go to the main function. Here first few lines are very simple. Creating the driver instance for the Chrome and just navigating to the sasdemo.com. Then asset true on element or perform action on element. Both works in the same way. Let's go to the perform action on element. Here you are passing the driver and you are passing the locator supplier which has username. So now this locator supplier has been passed with the input of username. Then it will go to here. It will override. So basically it will be taking here and it will call that method with locator type as XPath. Then here the locator key, locator type both has been given here. Then everything will be evaluated and you will return the value by XPath. So basically you will be returning the value from here. Now let's go to the actual function, perform action. In perform action, so you have completed all the functionality. This all will happen when you call the locator supplier dot get method. When you call the get method, then only this entire functionality will be executed. Then after executing these things, you will be getting the element and everything is fine. And element is not null, element is displayed, element is enabled. Then you are calling the consumer function. We are just consuming the action that we have sent. The action that we have sent is send keys. In case of asset, you might be sending the predicate. We can see both here. So let's see, we are using the consumer function. As you know that consumer function will be executed when you call the accept method. The same way, if you see the asset true on element, here you are passing the predicate and predicate function will be used whenever you call the test method. So basically here we all just made the functional composition that we discussed in the slide. In very simple words, here you can see driver and the supplier function and the consumer function. Here driver, supplier function and the predicate function. So now our code is so much modularized. So either we will send the asset true on element or perform an action. The driver input, locator supplier. Obviously we need the locator supplier whenever we want to do some action on the UI. And we are passing only the locator key. So remaining everything will be taken care by the Selenist class. And this inputs will be taken from the locators dot property so that you don't need to worry about your code. Whenever the XPath changes, you directly change in your locator properties file rather than updating your code. And predicate function is straightforward. You can directly type some questions, you will have the predicates. And whenever you want to do some actions, you can use some actions like send keys, click, and so on. So in this way, simply we have used the supplier function to get the or to supply the XPath locator or CSS locator from our properties file. And this will be executed as a lazy evaluation so that whenever you want, that time will be this will be executed. So this way we have understood how the supplier function works. A supplier function can be created by using the supplier keyword followed by the return type, and we will have our own implementation how to return that value with the type of double or with the type what we mentioned here. And whenever we want to get the value, obviously we will use the get method. It does not require any inputs. Then in Selenium we have used this locator supplier as one of the use case where we will be getting the data from the properties file and we will return that based on the locator key and locator type. And this entire code will be executed whenever we call the get method. And the output code is very simple now. Just you have driver, locator supplier and the predicate or the action that you want to do. So this way we have understood the supplier functional interface in this video. So thanks all. Thanks for watching and have a great day.